And Jesus very clearly moves through an explanation of the character of God.
Yes.
How does God operate? He causes the sun to shine on the good and the evil. He causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust. And then Jesus says, therefore, you shall be perfect just as.
In the same way.
Yeah, in the same way, your Father in heaven is perfect. So perfection here is very interesting because it's defined by what he's just said in the passage that we read.
Thank you. We can't just import some, robotic version of perfection, some theological we have to understand perfection in the line of what Jesus is here describing.
Exactly. It's interesting, David, that the word perfect here is some version of the Greek word telos.
Yeah.
Teleological, telescope, telegraph.
Yeah, there's an end to it.
We've been talking about this over and over again. Jesus came to fulfill the law. That is, he came to work out the teleological goal of the law.
Where Moses was headed.
Where Moses was headed. So there are parts of the writings of Moses and the prophets that are in harmony, all of it's in harmony with the intent of the law, but it's moving somewhere, it's going forward, and Jesus is working out the implications of the law of Moses and the prophets by saying, don't just love your neighbor, love your enemy as well. And to be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect is to treat people the way God treats people. Sunshine, rain, universal blessing, indiscriminate blessing.
I was just going to say indiscriminate kindness.
Just goodness. Luke's gospel, and this is fascinating, you guys, this text, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, right? In Luke's version, he says, be merciful as your Father in heaven is merciful. Well, that's exactly the point. Love like God loves. That's what Jesus is teaching.
In the beatitudinal sequence, Ty, we see this because we've already noted that when we hunger and thirst for righteousness, we realize we receive that because of the mercy of God.
Yeah.
Right? Blessed are the merciful. When we begin to treat others the way that God has treated us, this causes us to be pure in heart. Mm-hmm. And when we begin to behave like God behaves and like Jesus behaves, then what? We become peacemakers, and we're called the children of God. Now, just look at that there. The children of God. And right here he says, if you behave like this, then you will be the children of your Father in heaven. So there's a direct tie between the opening of Matthew chapter 5 and its close. Right? You have this emphasis on being children of the Most High, of treating people with indiscriminate kindness and mercy. And while it might not work for nations, okay, fine. Jesus is not here speaking about foreign policy, right? And that's not to say that nations are not held to standards by God. We know that in Romans chapter 13. We've already quoted Romans chapter 13 in the series. But he's appealing to individual disciples and saying, you feel justified. You feel that it is your prerogative to love certain kinds of people and hate others. And I know that Moses has been wrongly interpreted and perverted to say, love your neighbors, hate your enemies. But I am actually bringing this much higher standard, this gospel standard, love your enemies.
Even nation to nation, we have often seen down through history that a weaker nation is treated by a stronger nation in a way that escalates the violence rather than deliberately trying to de-escalate the violence, right?
That's true.
So somebody throws a rock and then somebody launches a missile. That's a simple example. But the point that Jesus is making here is that the only way forward for the human race is to de-escalate the violence in relationships by seeking, as you said, reconciliation, going out of our way to be good even to those who are enemies.
The choice that Jesus is offering us here from 38 to 48 is a choice between reconciliation and retaliation. It's a choice between being merciful and being vengeful.
Exactly.
And revenge and vengeance comes quite natively, quite naturally to human beings.
And it's cyclical. It just goes on and on and on and on and on unless the cycle is broken.
Unless the cycle is broken. Yeah. And Jesus came to break that cycle of uninterrupted, escalating violence by his own death, his sacrificial death, whereby, again, as we've noted, he had the power and the capacity to do violence to anyone in any way that he deemed, that he wanted, and yet he submitted to violence. He was not the perpetrator of violence, he was the receiver of violence. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.